Whether you're watching, listening or reading this, welcome back to the Runpreneur vlog, where we discuss our mission to raise £1 million for children's charities by embarking on an epic challenge of run vlogging on consecutive days the distance of one lap around the world. That's 40,075 kilometres running on consecutive days, and we're doing a minimum of 5k a day, and I'll even do it barefoot style. It's an amazing cause. It's going to take about 15 years to accomplish, so it's pretty epic. So hopefully you'll enjoy joining the journey with me. And for those regulars, when I discuss all things entrepreneurship and running, and it is a beautiful day today. Sun is out and it's about 5-6 degrees, so not too cold, so decent running conditions. And it's Thursday Tales today, where we talk about past experiences in business, and today's topic is a deep dive on the 2+2 or the 2 squared property strategy. So as always, if you like this episode, please give it a like and a subscribe, and let's get started. So, the 2+2 model. Okay, we've kind of rebranded it a little bit to make it seem a bit more attractive, and we've called it 2 squared. Now, this is one of my most favourite property strategies because it just ticks so many positive boxes for me. I have done another episode on this previously, but I'm going to try and go a bit deeper today, pure and simply because we're doing weekly clubhouse rooms at the moment on social property strategies that are recession proof, and this is something we cover quite in a lot of detail. So there's been a lot of questions, so hopefully that's given me quite a lot of content I can talk about regarding the strategy today that I perhaps didn't do in the previous episode. So first and foremost, what is the 2+2 strategy? Well, it's like a hybrid property strategy, because historically, when people invest in property, and they rent it out, if they buy and hold and they're going to rent out, they'll rent out in a single let occupancy. The returns are very small, but the issues you generally experience if you have a decent agent are relatively small as well. So small returns, but consistent, not too much risk. If you want the best returns, you have to move into the HMO world, or the shared accommodation world, which, rather than them having one tenant in a house, you're having 4 or 5 or more. And anything from 3 and above is classified as an HMO. And you've then got all of the fire safety regulations you have to comply with. You've got the management of 3, 4, 5 times as many tenants. You've got the relationship side of those tenants to kind of manage, which can often be the hardest. The increased maintenance, the increased wear and tear. There's loads of issues. You've got to pay council tax. Often you'll pay utility bills as well. This goes on and on and on. However, the upside is that you'll get quite often 4 or 5 times the rent that you would have got if you rented the property out in a single occupancy basis. Now, my background is I've built a portfolio of 96 properties. We're kind of somewhere between 50 and 60 at the moment, as we're consolidating the portfolio at the moment. But I still have, or have had, 40 odd HMOs, okay? And there's been a mix between professionals and social tenants. I'm focusing on social tenants for this episode because it's a social strategy that I'm talking to you about. And I know better than many the challenges that can come with social HMOs. It's it's full on. It's almost in the realms of social working, the support you need to provide the tenants and the management you need to try and have a harmonious environment that doesn't affect either the tenants or the local surroundings in the community. The rewards are good, although the maintenance spend can be quite considerable, because if you're renting out a whole house to 5 or 6 people, none of them treat it as their own. They just look at their room as a place to lay their head. So they don't generally care about keeping it in pristine condition or having an element of pride in their accommodation. Not always, but quite often that's the case. And then that will come with a cost of cleaning and a cost of maintenance and repairs from kind of them not mistreating the building, etc. So The 2 squared model, or the 2 plus 2, is a hybrid. It's like a bridge between the two. What you're ultimately doing is the government are fully aware that the living conditions in some of these social HMOs are not up to standard. And it doesn't matter how hard the landlord can try at times, you can't control how people choose to live. And I have social HMOs that it's just like a normal home. You think this is great. I have others that we're constantly doing works on to keep bringing them back, but still the tenants just don't seem to care about the living conditions, which is incredibly frustrating. So it's an uphill battle. Now the 2 squared model, or the 2 plus 2, is what you're doing is, if you're over 35 years of age, the government have created it's not really a loophole, it's been around for 10 years plus, I would imagine, because I started doing this 10 years ago, and probably there were people doing it way before me. But ultimately what you're doing is, if you give it has to be over 35, has to be a single adult, and they can then claim, rather than the room rate of which tenants are claiming benefits would claim for renting a room, you give them exclusive usage of 2 self-contained rooms in the property. So a bedroom and a living room, for example, or it could be 2 bedrooms or 2 reception rooms, whatever the layout of the property is. But as long as you give them 2 rooms that they have exclusive use of, they qualify for the 1 bedroom rate, which is like a studio flat or a 1 bedroom flat rate on the benefit scale. But that's often significantly higher than the room rate. In certain instances, it can be nearly double. So, depending on the area, so then technically you can then have 2 over 35-year-olds on a joint tenancy agreement. Have to be on a joint tenancy agreement, because if you have more than 1 tenancy in a property, it switches over to an HMO, and all the kind of regulations that come with a HMO come back with it. So it has to be a joint tenancy, but technically you're renting the whole house to 2 individuals over the age of 35, and they have exclusive usage of 2 rooms each. Okay, and that structure, you'll get the 2 times the 1 bedroom rate. And if I just give you some figures, I mean, for a room in one of the areas that I have a lot of my HMOs, I get £420 a month. Okay, it's a relatively affluent area, but if I rent the 1 bedroom rate, so 2 rooms, I'm getting 770. Not quite double, but not far off double. So by putting 2 tenants in on a single occupancy, when I don't have to deal with all the fire regulations and the issues associated with council tax, the management, etc. with an HMO, I can now put 2 over 35-year-olds into the property, and I'm getting over 1,500 quid, not far off 1,600 quid, which is almost the equivalent of 4 HMO tenants. Okay, and the upside is council tax is then covered by the tenants, and because they're on benefits, they generally pay an incredibly low reduced rate. It's normally 25% of the total value that the landlord would normally pay. Split between 2, they're paying like 12.5% of what a typical council tax bill would be. More often than not, it's like £120 or something. So it's like £15 a month that they're going to have to pay, something in that neck of the woods. So it's not putting them under any huge financial duress. And you've also you can get the scenarios where you can have siblings living together, if you can find them, 2 friends, or even a boyfriend and girlfriend that are not serious enough to be joint claiming. It also works as well. So there's loads of different structures you can do, but what you'll then find is these people will then treat the place as their home. All of a sudden, from having a scenario that they've got 1 little pokey room, and the whole house, the rest of the house is communal spaces and kitchen, bathrooms all shared. They've now got 2 rooms. They've got their own living room, their own bedroom, and they're only sharing with one another. And usually, if you do this right, you can get people that actually have a pre-existing relationship, so they already get along, they trust one another, and then they treat it as their home, because it's a 3 or 4 bedroom property that they've got between 2 of them. So it's almost like having a flat each. The living conditions are far better. They treat the property far better. The tenant churn is far lower. You don't have to pay council tax, utility bills, all these things that typically you would do with an HMO. There's no fire regulations. There are still amenity standards you have to comply by, and compliance and safety of your tenants should be the most important aspect of being a landlord. But they're very different compared to an HMO, where you've got a far greater volume of people in the property, and you can get similar to HMO level rents with single let occupancy. So it's a hugely financially viable strategy, and also from an ethical point of view, you're giving people a better standard of living. And that's what it's come down to a lot for me. When I see the conditions that some people live in, it's not through my intention. I'm trying to make people, I've always positioned a lot of my housing stock as stepping stone to get people from hard times back onto the right path and back on as a ladder, one rung up the ladder to a stable and successful life they can move on and be proud with. And it's just really difficult in the HMO environment. Yet the 2+2 model, that often you get people that make those steps but stay in the 2+2 model because they're living with a friend, they've got a big house, they're happy, and it's just a far better model in my opinion. So I've currently got 14 2-squared strategy properties, or 2+2s, and I'm gradually migrating the last few HMOs that I had. I had 40 HMOs at one point, and we're gradually migrating them all across the 2-squared because I've got the data now that the amount that it costs to run a 2-squared, in comparison to an HMO is more than double, sometimes 3 or 4 times the cost to run an HMO as it is to run 2-squared. You're giving people better standard of living, and the profitability figures are significantly higher, in some cases double the profitability, because you don't have such a huge cost attached with running the property of which you do with an HMO. So that's an overview of the strategy. I hope you understand. The things you do need to understand is with social tenants is that you get a really wide spectrum of people, and the tenant application process needs to be incredibly robust, because you still have to house people. These aren't people that are just going to make you money. These are people that have lives, and you need to care about giving them an acceptable, safe, compliant standard of living and comfortable standard of living, and that should be the most important thing. So when you're vetting tenants, you need to make sure that you're asking the right questions and understanding enough about their background. Quite often you'll get people with minor, past criminal convictions, etc. There are certain ones that you're just not going to touch. But if it's something like a mistake that someone did as a teenager and they're now 35, you might take a different opinion on that as a young mistake. But you're also not going to. You also get a lot of people that maybe have fallen upon alcohol addiction or recovering addicts, for example. You're not going to put anybody like that with someone who has a past track record with substance abuse, because it's just going to create a situation which is unethical, and you're setting people up to fail. So you need to be very mindful about housing people safely and responsibly. If you're going to do this, the best way to do it is to get a network of referrers. So local council, housing options, supported living providers, homeless charities, housing associations, job centre, people that have a background to that individual that can give you the background story, because they've got a vested interest to help these people move on. They care about these people, and you've got the background story to make sure that you're housing people safely and responsibly. So we don't ever have to market for tenants. We've got such a network of referrers now that we get tenant referrals consistently without the need to ever market. So that's the other real positive. We don't have to market for tenants all the time because there's such a high demand for this type of accommodation. And to do it safely and responsibly and see houses being treated the right way and people living in comfortable, compliant, safe living conditions and giving them a platform to grow is really rewarding. So hopefully that kind of makes sense with how this all pieces together. So it's not for the faint-hearted. It still requires a lot of care and attention. It's not a quick get-rich-quick scheme or anything, but is one of the best sustainable property investment models if because you're getting high return with lower cost. It's a real sweet spot of profitability. And we're just coming out of a global pandemic. We're still heavily in it, and so many people have had their livelihoods affected by this. So the demand for kind of social housing now is increasing higher than ever. So the demand is massive, and it's always massive because we have a growing population and we never build enough houses anyway. So it's helping solving a much bigger issue, and you're doing it in an ethical way, which really resonates well with me. I hate the thoughts of any of my tenants living in conditions that I wouldn't be comfortable living in myself if I was in their position, and unfortunately in some of the HMOs, with regardless of how hard we try, people will live in conditions that they choose to live in, and it's challenging. But I'm pretty sure, had I put that individual in a property that they like, giving them 2 rooms and having a friend living with them, I'm fairly sure they'd have taken a lot more pride in their accommodation. So hopefully that helps. So that's pretty much it for me today. As always, if you've got any questions on this stuff, drop me a comment, but hopefully I've kind of given you a good summary of the 2+2 or the 2 squared model. It is 2 single adults over the age of 35 who are claiming separately their universal credit claims but sharing a joint tenancy, and you're giving them exclusive usage to 2 self-contained rooms in the property, and rather than the shared room rate that they would get for renting a room, they get the 1-bedroom LHA rate, which is often nearly double the shared accommodation rate, which is a significant increase, and you're giving people much more space, much more comfortable living conditions that really works nicely as an investment strategy. Just going past someone in a minute, hang on. Morning. So hopefully that helps. As always, if you've got any questions and stuff, drop me a comment. I'll respond to everyone. If it's a bigger question, I'll do a separate vlog episode and tag you in. Please check out the link in my bios where you can access my YouTube channel, blog and podcast, so you can watch, listen or read this episode, and more importantly, follow my journey of my mission to raise £1 million for children's charities by run vlogging on consecutive days the distance of 1 lap around the planet. So a huge challenge, but we're going to raise £1 million for some amazing charities. I'll talk about which charities I'm raising money for very soon, but do check out the journey to keep up to speed with it. And all I have to say is that the content I talk about has always been about helping people overcome the emotions of stress, overwhelm and anxiety by using exercise, or in my case running, as a release mechanism to relieve those daily, weekly pressures in the form of stress, to clear your head, process what's been going on, gain clarity and focus and move on. If you don't have that process, it's like pressure that builds in a pipe. The stresses will build into overwhelm. The overwhelm is when you start freezing, procrastinating, you've got too many things going on. They then evolve to anxiety. We start having panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and in the realms of mental health challenges, really, really bad place to be. And inevitably, if you don't solve it then, boom, the pipe bursts. And in that instance, either you have a breakdown, or if it's a business that we're talking about here, that will break down as well. Now, I've been there, and I've lost businesses because of this. I've lost business partners because of this, and I've almost been bankrupt because of these exact issues. And it's a horribly dark place, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. And there's no coincidence in the last 10 months of doing this running vlog that I've made more progress than I have done in the previous 4 years without it. So hope there's enough social proof there to show that this stuff really works. And my pledge to you, if you are one of these entrepreneurs or people struggling with these issues, drop me a message, okay? The Runpreneur vlog is not about making money. It's all about giving value, and it's all about charitable causes. And if I can help in any way, I'll jump on a quick call with you. No cost, no catch. I'll give you some stepping stones and some hints and tips that I know are transferable into your life. And if you follow them, it'll get you back on the right path. And many have taken me up on this already, and I know we've made a significant difference to so many people's lives. And I always said that if this vlog helps just one person or saves one business, it's been 1,000,000% worthwhile. So reach out, help is there, it doesn't cost anything, and it just takes the courage to ask, and you'd be amazed with the results. So that's it from me today. As always, if you like this episode, give it a like, comment and a subscribe. If you want to see similar episodes, check out links in my bio where you can access my YouTube channel, my blog and my podcast, so you can watch, listen and read the content. And most importantly, you can keep up to date with my challenge to raise £1 million for children's charities by run vlogging on consecutive days the distance of 1 lap around the world. So all I'll leave you with now is, as always, stay positive, stay happy, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.